Lieutenant Commander Adrian Zhang stood before the Galactic Council, fighting the urge to roll his eyes as 27 different species collectively gasped in horror at his presentation. The holographic display behind him showed standard Earth pest control methods, nothing more dramatic than your average Tuesday afternoon extermination job. "Let me get this straight," rumbled High Counselor Vexathor, his crystalline form shimmering with what Zhang had learned to recognize as disgust. "You deliberately breed specialized organisms whose sole purpose is to eliminate other species." Zhang pinched the bridge of his nose. "No, Your Excellence, we create targeted chemical compounds to deal with destructive pests that—" "Murderer!" shrieked Delegate Pix, her feathers puffing up to twice their normal size. "They even murder the murderers they create. It's exponential murder." "Okay, first of all," Zhang held up a hand, "can we maybe cool it with the murder talk? We're discussing cockroach control, not interstellar genocide." The chamber erupted in another round of horrified gasps. Zhang was starting to wonder if these aliens practiced their synchronized gasping in their spare time. "You speak of this cockroach control with such casualness, a gelatinous being quivered in its containment field, as if the systematic elimination of an entire species is nothing more than a daily chore." "Because it literally is a daily chore," Zhang muttered under his breath before raising his voice. "Look, every human civilization has had to deal with pests, species that destroy food supplies, spread disease, or damage infrastructure. We've simply gotten really good at it over the millennia." "Too good," hissed Councillor Zixathar, their compound eyes reflecting the holographic images in a kaleidoscope of judgment. "We've reviewed your species' history. Exterminators, pest control, fumigation experts, you have entire industries dedicated to death." Zhang couldn't help it. He laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber like a gunshot, making several delegates recoil. "With all due respect, Your Excellencies, you're making it sound like we're running around trying to wipe out every species we meet. We're talking about protecting our homes and families from rats and roaches, not launching some kind of cosmic crusade." "And yet," Vexathor's crystal structure pulsed with ominous light, "here you stand, humanity's representative, carrying these methods into the stars themselves." "Only because you asked for our help," Zhang threw up his hands in exasperation. "Your colonies are being overrun by spacefaring parasites that are resistant to all your traditional methods. We have literally thousands of years of experience dealing with adaptive pest species, but if you'd rather let the Void Swarm continue consuming your outer worlds because you're squeamish about our methods, be my guest." The silence that followed was deafening. Zhang could practically see the conflict playing out across their alien features, their horror at human methods warring with their desperate need for a solution. Finally, Vexathor spoke, each word seeming to cause him physical pain. "The Council will consider your proposal, Lieutenant Commander, though we must ask, how does your species sleep at night, knowing the extent of your expertise?" Zhang smiled, and several delegates flinched at the predatory display of teeth. "Usually pretty well, actually. Amazing what a pest-free environment can do for your rest cycle. But hey, take your time deciding. I'm sure those colony worlds can hold out for another few cycles while you debate the ethics of pest control." The sarcasm wasn't lost on the Council, neither was the truth in his words. Zhang remembered the day humanity first met the Zixthar Confederation like it was yesterday, mainly because it was such a spectacular disaster that the footage had become a viral sensation across both human and alien social networks. The Zixathar ship had landed in Central Park, New York, of all places. Their timing couldn't have been worse, or better, depending on your sense of humor. The city was in the middle of its largest bedbug outbreak in decades. "Greetings, Earth-dwellers, we come seeking peaceful first contact." The Zixthar ambassador's historic speech was cut short by the steady beeping of a pest control truck backing up nearby. The alien delegation watched in horror as humans in white protective suits began spraying nearby buildings with industrial-grade insecticide. "Oh, merciful cosmos," the ambassador's translator somehow managed to convey both terror and disgust. "They're gassing their own dwellings." Zhang, then just a junior diplomatic officer, had tried to explain. No, it's not what you think. We're just dealing with a pest problem." "They admit to systematic species elimination," another delegate had shrieked, their compound eyes wild with fear. "The legends of the Exterminators are true. It turned out there was an ancient galactic prophecy about a species of great exterminators who would one day rise to bring death to the cosmos. The fact that humanity's first impression involved chemical warfare against a resistant species probably didn't help our case. Things only got worse when the aliens discovered the yellow pages. "You've got pests, we've got solutions," read one horrified Zixthar researcher from an Exterminators advertisement. "No bug too small, no infestation too large. They boast of their killing efficiency." "Family-owned business serving New York since 1954, another one chittered in terror. "They indoctrinate their young into the killing arts." The situation reached peak absurdity when they discovered pest control review websites. "Listen to this barbaric testimony," a Zixthar cultural analyst announced to the emergency council session. "Jim's pest control saved our home. The roach problem was out of control, but after one treatment, we haven't seen a single bug. Best exterminator in the tri-state area, would definitely recommend." "They rate their killers on a 5-star system," whimpered another analyst. "They give higher ratings for more complete extinction events." Zhang had spent 6 months trying to explain that humans weren't actually running around trying to commit xenocide against every species we met. The fact that we had an entire channel dedicated to pest control, complete with dramatic music and before-after footage, didn't help our case. "But you must understand," Zhang had argued during one particularly frustrating meeting, "these are invasive species that damage our ecosystems and spread disease." "Aha," the Zixthar chief biologist pointed accusingly. "So you admit to making judgment calls about which species deserve to live or die. What's to stop you from declaring any species a pest when convenient?" "Common sense," Zhang had suggested, immediately regretting it when the entire alien delegation began producing high-pitched keening noises of distress. The tension reached new heights when humanity's space program revealed its standard quarantine and decontamination procedures for returning spacecraft. "They even attack the microscopic," a Zixthar health official had declared. "No life form is too small to escape their extermination protocols." It got to the point where every human action was viewed through the lens of our exterminator nature. When we shared our agricultural practices, they focused on our pest control methods rather than our crop yields. When we discussed medical advances, they fixated on our antibacterial protocols. Even our cleaning products were viewed with suspicion. "Kills 99.9% of germs," a Zixthar domestic analyst had quoted from a bottle of surface cleaner, voice trembling. "They commit microscopic genocide as part of their daily cleaning rituals." The final straw came when they discovered our science fiction. "They dream of eliminating threats across the galaxy," the Zixthar cultural minister had announced, after discovering Earth's collection of movies about fighting alien invasions. "Their entertainment focuses on species elimination scenarios." Zhang had tried pointing out that we had just as many movies about peacefully meeting aliens, but apparently E.T. wasn't as memorable as Independence Day. Now, standing before the Galactic Council years later, Zhang couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The very skills that had terrified the galaxy were now desperately needed. The Void Swarm was proving to be the greatest pest control challenge humanity had ever faced, assuming the Council could get over their horror of human methods long enough to accept our help. "Perhaps," Zhang suggested to the still deliberating Council, "you'd like to hear about some of our more successful pest control operations? I brought slides." The synchronized flinching of 27 different species almost made the whole diplomatic nightmare worth it. Almost. The holographic display in Zhang's temporary office aboard the Galactic Council station showed the spread of the Void Swarm across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Red dots indicating infected systems multiplied like, well, pests. "So let me make sure I understand this correctly," Zhang said, watching another cluster of stars turn red. "These things are basically space termites?" Chief Science Officer Nixville of the Zixthar Confederation twitched his antennae in what might have been irritation. "The Void Swarm is a highly evolved collective of quantum phase organisms that consume matter at the subatomic level." "Space termites," Zhang repeated firmly, "that eat through hulls, consume entire space stations, and reproduce exponentially. Classic pest behavior. Your simplification of a complex threat has already given me 3 possible solutions," Zhang interrupted, pulling up his tablet. "Look, you've been trying to fight these things like they're an invasion force. Organized battles, defense lines, quarantine zones, but that's not how you deal with an infestation." The alien scientist's compound eyes reflected the spreading red dots. Our most advanced weapons barely slow them down. They adapt to every countermeasure within days. Of course they do, Zhang said, starting to pace. That's what pests do. You hit them with poison, they develop resistance. You try to trap them, they find new paths. You have to think like an exterminator, not a general. He pulled up another display, this one showing the molecular structure of the void swarm organisms. Your mistake was trying to kill them directly. We need to disrupt their life cycle, make their environment inhospitable. Have you noticed how they always start their consumption at the same molecular frequency? Nixville's antennae twitched again. Yes, but nothing. That's their weakness. Just like every pest has a preferred environment, these things have a preferred quantum phase. Change that, and they're vulnerable. Zhang grinned. We've been dealing with adaptive pests since before we invented writing. Trust me on this. He sent a message to his team back on Earth, a group of scientists who'd cut their teeth developing new pest control methods for particularly resistant species. Within hours, his office had become a bizarre mix of quantum physics equations and traditional pest control methodology. Dr. Chen, his chief researcher, had actually laughed when she saw the void swarm data. They're not even that different from quantum tunneling cockroaches we dealt with in that lab accident last year. Remember that mess? The alien representatives watching their work grew increasingly uncomfortable as Zhang's team approached the galaxy-threatening void swarm with the same methodical efficiency they'd use for a typical household infestation. First, we identify their entry points, Zhang explained to the horrified council members. Just like checking a house for where the bugs are getting in. Then we seal those with a quantum phase barrier, basically high-tech caulking. You're comparing saving the galaxy to home maintenance? A crystalline council member vibrated in disbelief. Next, we make their food source inaccessible, Zhang continued, ignoring the interruption. They consume matter at a specific quantum frequency? Fine. We'll shift everything they try to eat to a different frequency. It's like putting your food in sealed containers during a moth infestation. His team had already started manufacturing what they called quantum phase shifters, devices that could adjust the molecular frequency of entire space stations. The void swarm would find their favorite snacks suddenly indigestible. But the masterstroke, Zhang said, pulling up the final phase of their plan, is this beauty. The display showed a complex molecule that his team had designed. Dr. Chen had dubbed it quantum catnip. It emitted quantum frequencies that the void swarm found irresistible. But unlike their usual food sources, this one was designed to disrupt their molecular cohesion. They'll be attracted to it, Zhang explained, consume it, and then find themselves unable to maintain their quantum phase stability. No muss, no fuss, no giant space battles, just good old-fashioned pest control. The council chamber had gone very quiet. Finally, High Councillor Vexithor spoke. You developed this solution in 3 days? Well, yeah, Zhang shrugged. Once we stopped thinking of them as some unstoppable cosmic horror and started treating them like what they are, pests that needed exterminating, the solution was pretty obvious. And you're confident this will work? Zhang smiled that predatory smile again. Your Excellence, humanity has been protecting its homes from unwanted invaders since we lived in caves. We've had millions of years to perfect our methods. These void swarm organisms, they're just spacefaring termites with delusions of grandeur. He turned back to the display, watching his team's simulations show the void swarm being systematically eliminated from infected systems. Sometimes the most terrifying thing about humanity isn't our capacity for violence, but our capacity for turning the extraordinary into the mundane. You see an unstoppable cosmic threat. We see a pest control problem that needs solving. The council members exchanged looks that mixed horror with growing hope. They'd feared humanity's expertise in extermination. Now they were counting on it. Now, Zhang said, clapping his hands together, who's ready to sign off on Operation Clean Sweep? The name made several council members flinch, but they signed anyway. After all, when your house is infested, you call an exterminator, even if the exterminator terrifies you more than the pests. Operation Clean Sweep began with what Zhang's team called spring cleaning on a cosmic scale. The sight of human extermination ships approaching the infected systems caused almost as much panic as the void swarm itself. Please note, Zhang announced over the Galactic broadcast channels, that all systems will be treated in order of infestation severity. Remember to shift all essential equipment to the provided safe frequencies before treatment begins, and maybe don't watch the process if you're squeamish. The human ships looked deceptively ordinary, retrofitted cargo vessels painted with the universal pest control colors of white and red. The Zixathar military commander nearly had an aneurysm when he saw them. "These are your mighty weapons?" he chittered in disbelief. "They look like maintenance vessels." "Exactly," Zhang said with satisfaction. "Best way to deal with pests is to not let them know you're coming for them. You think cockroaches would stick around if the spray can announced itself with sirens and flashing lights?" The first system they treated was Outpost Delta 9, a small mining colony that had been thoroughly infested. The void swarm had consumed nearly half the station's outer hull, their quantum phase bodies making the metal look like Swiss cheese. "Classic signs of a severe infestation," Dr. Chen commented, making notes on her tablet. "See how they've established clear feeding patterns, amateurs. Never get predictable with your feeding habits when there's an exterminator around." The human ships moved into position with practiced efficiency. From their holds emerged clouds of microscopic quantum phase shifters, or, as Zhang's team called them, space roach motels. "Remember," Zhang instructed his teams, "we're not trying to kill them directly. We're making their environment uninhabitable. Just like how you don't fight cockroaches, you make your house a place they don't want to live." The alien observers watched in fascination and horror as the human ships systematically transformed the battlefield into what amounted to a giant pest control operation. The quantum phase shifters created zones of altered reality that the void swarm couldn't process, herding them toward areas treated with the quantum catnip. "Are they running away?" a Zixthar scientist asked in disbelief as swarms of void organisms began abandoning their feeding grounds. "Not running away," Zhang corrected with a grin, "taking the bait, watch." The void swarm, attracted by the irresistible quantum frequencies of the treated areas, swarmed toward what they perceived as a perfect feeding ground. Instead, they found themselves unable to maintain their quantum coherence. Entire clusters of the creatures began to destabilize, their matter-consuming powers rendered useless. "Hold on," the Zixthar commander said slowly. "You're not killing them, you're making them kill themselves." "We prefer to think of it as letting nature take its course," Zhang replied. "If they choose to consume something that disagrees with them, that's hardly our fault." The human approach to the void swarm problem was so fundamentally different from anything the galactic community had tried that it took them hours to realize it was working. Where massive battle fleets had failed, simple pest control principles were succeeding. "But what about the ones that develop resistance?" a council member asked anxiously. Zhang actually laughed. "You think we haven't dealt with the resistant pests before? We've got 16 different quantum frequency variants ready to go. By the time they adapt to one, we'll hit them with another. It's basic pest control rotation." The operation continued system by system, each treatment more efficient than the last as the human teams refined their methods. They developed new techniques on the fly, treating the galaxy's greatest threat with the same matter-of-fact efficiency as a routine household spraying. "We're calling this new delivery system the Quantum Bug Bomb," Dr. Chen announced proudly, showing off a device that could flood an entire system with phase-shifting particles in minutes. Patent pending. The alien observers couldn't decide what was more disturbing, the fact that humanity had turned cosmic horror into pest control, or how casually we went about it. "You're humming," the Zixathar commander accused Zhang during one particularly successful operation. "Force of habit," Zhang shrugged. "My uncle was an exterminator. He always said, if you're not enjoying your work, you're in the wrong business." By the end of the first week, 30 systems had been cleared. The void swarm, for the first time since its appearance, was in retreat, not from overwhelming military might or advanced technology, but from simple, methodical pest control practices scaled up to cosmic proportions. "I don't understand," a council member admitted, watching another cluster of void organisms succumb to the quantum catnip. "Your species has turned galaxy-wide extermination into a science," Zhang finished. "Look, every species has its talents. Yours build amazing ships. The crystallines have their quantum computers. We humans, we're really good at making things dead when they need to be dead." He paused to check the latest success reports. "Though personally, I think our real talent is making the extraordinary ordinary. Giant spacefaring monsters that eat matter itself? Nah, just pests that need dealing with. Ultimate cosmic horror, more like ultimate cosmic household chore. The operation was proceeding perfectly, perhaps too perfectly. Zhang had been an exterminator's nephew long enough to know that when things went this smoothly, you were usually about to discover the nest you hadn't spotted. He just hoped they found it before it found them. Right, he announced, pushing aside his concerns for now. Who's ready to start on the beta quadrant? I hear they've got a particularly nasty infestation around their central processing station. Might need to break out the heavy-duty stuff for this one. The synchronized shudder from the alien observers was, as always, deeply satisfying. The Void Swarm Queen was exactly where Zhang's team predicted it would be, right in the heart of the beta quadrant's largest dark matter cloud. Classic pest behavior, really. Always build the nest where it's hardest to reach. You have to appreciate the irony, Zhang commented, watching the massive quantum phase entity pulse with otherworldly energy. We spent months trying to convince the galaxy we weren't the prophesied exterminators, only to end up living up to the title anyway. The Queen was enormous, a writhing mass of quantum instabilities that made the space around it look like shattered glass. Their previous methods had barely scratched its outer layers, which was exactly as planned. All teams in position? Zhang asked over the comm. Ready with the quantum phase shifters, Dr. Chen reported, though I still think calling this plan the bug zapper is a bit on the nose. Sometimes the classics are classics for a reason, Zhang replied. Begin Operation Final Sweep. The human ships moved with choreographed precision, each vessel releasing clouds of quantum phase shifters in seemingly random patterns. To the alien observers it looked like chaos. To Zhang, it was beautiful efficiency. What are they doing? The Zixthar commander demanded. Their formation makes no sense. Watch and learn, Zhang said with a grin. Ever wonder why bugs always fly toward bug zappers? It's because we understand how they think better than they do. The quantum phase shifters weren't just changing the space around the Queen. They were creating a massive, multi-dimensional maze. Each shift in quantum frequency was precisely calculated to drive the Queen toward a specific point in space. Your species, the Zixthar scientist observed, appears to operate on controlled chaos. Nah, Zhang corrected. We just understand that sometimes the most efficient solution looks like madness to anyone who doesn't see the whole picture, like how a spiderweb looks random until you see it catch a fly. The Queen, sensing the changing quantum frequencies around her, began to move exactly as predicted. Each attempt to escape led her further into the trap. Her swarm drones followed, drawn by the same instincts that made them such effective pests in the first place. Now for the fun part, Zhang announced. Dr. Chen, time to introduce our friend to the largest quantum bug zapper ever built. The dark matter cloud suddenly lit up with energy as thousands of quantum phase shifters activated simultaneously. The seemingly random pattern of their deployment revealed itself as an enormous quantum frequency net, each node reinforcing the others. The Queen screamed in frequencies that shouldn't have been possible in normal space. Her swarm rushed to defend her, only to find themselves caught in the same trap. The thing about pests, Zhang lectured as the trap closed in, is that they're predictable. They follow their instincts. And once you understand those instincts, the quantum net pulsed, each wave of energy disrupting the void swarm's quantum coherence. The Queen thrashed, trying to phase shift to escape, but found every frequency she tried already blocked. This isn't battle, the Zixthar commander realized. This is extermination raised to an art form. Exactly, Zhang agreed. Why fight when you can simply remove the infestation with maximum efficiency? We're not warriors. We're pest control experts. The Queen made one final attempt to break free, gathering her remaining swarm into a massive quantum battering ram. It might have worked if the humans hadn't predicted that too. Release the quantum catnip, Zhang ordered, maximum concentration. The irresistible quantum frequencies hit the swarm like a drug, disrupting their coordination. The Queen's attack dissolved into chaos as her drones broke formation, drawn to the lethal bait. Your species, the Zixthar scientist said slowly, truly understands the art of death. Zhang shook his head. No, we understand the art of problem-solving. Death is just sometimes the solution. Big difference. The Queen's final dissolution was almost anticlimactic. One moment she was there, a terror of the galaxy, and the next she was just another successfully treated infestation. As the quantum net powered down, Zhang pulled up the galaxy map. The red dots indicating void swarm activity were disappearing one by one as the remnants of the swarm, cut off from their queen, succumbed to the quantum phase shifts. Cleanup crews report all systems responding as expected, Dr. Chen announced. Estimate total elimination of remaining void swarm elements within 48 hours. The alien observers stared at the humans in a new light. The species they had feared as prophesied exterminators had indeed brought death to the cosmos, but only to that which threatened the galaxy's stability. You know, the Zixathar commander said thoughtfully, perhaps we misinterpreted the prophecy. It never specified what the exterminators would eliminate. Or maybe, Zhang suggested, you all need to stop putting so much stock in prophecies and start appreciating good pest control services. Speaking of which, who's handling the billing for this job? Because galaxy-wide extermination services don't come cheap. The fact that he could joke about billing after orchestrating the elimination of the galaxy's greatest threat somehow made it even more terrifying and impressive. One question, the Zixathar scientist asked, how did you know the Queen would fall for such a trap? Zhang smiled that predatory smile one last time. Because at the end of the day, no matter how big or scary they are pests, and nobody knows pests like human exterminators. The galaxy would never look at humanity quite the same way again, but maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. After all, everyone needs a good exterminator now and then, even if they're a little terrifying themselves. 6 months after Operation Clean Sweep, Zhang found himself back before the Galactic Council. This time, instead of horrified gasps, he was greeted with awkward respect, the kind reserved for someone you're terrified of but desperately need. The Human Extermination Services Division, Zhang read from his tablet, has received 4,328 service requests in the past month alone. He looked up at the council with raised eyebrows. You do realize we charge overtime for off-world calls, right? The council chambers, once a place of diplomatic tension, had become something far more mundane, a customer service center for galaxy-wide pest control. The Andromeda branch is reporting a severe infestation of quantum phase spores, High Councillor Vexthor announced, his crystalline form flickering with what might have been embarrassment. Our own methods have proven insufficient. Naturally, Zhang replied, making a note, we'll send our level 5 team. Just remember to sign the warranty waiver this time. We're not responsible for any reality distortions that occur during standard treatment procedures. The galaxy's greatest irony. The species they had feared as harbingers of death had become their go-to problem solvers. Turned out there were a lot of pests in space, and nobody dealt with pests quite like humans. We've had to open 3 new training facilities, Zhang continued, scrolling through reports. Who knew there'd be such high demand for human pest control experts? We're even offering franchising opportunities in the Outer Rim. A holographic display showed human extermination ships, now sporting official Galaxy's best pest control logos, dealing with everything from microscopic quantum parasites to planet-sized spatial anomalies, all treated with the same methodical efficiency that had taken down the void swarm. The prophecy of the Exterminators, a council member mused, spoke of a species that would bring death to the cosmos. We assumed it meant indiscriminate destruction. Instead, you got customer service and quarterly reports, Zhang finished with a smirk. Funny how things work out. The human approach to cosmic horrors had fundamentally changed how the galaxy viewed existential threats. Why panic about space-time anomalies when you could just call your local human exterminator? They even offered monthly maintenance plans. Though I have to admit, Zhang added, reviewing the latest customer feedback, I never thought I'd see the day when Harbinger of Doom would be listed as a positive job qualification. Our recruitment ads are getting interesting. The Zixathar ambassador, once his greatest critic, now headed the Galactic Pest Control Regulatory Committee. We've had to completely rewrite our emergency response protocols, he admitted. Turns out approaching cosmic horrors like a pest control problem is surprisingly effective. Everything's a pest if you look at it right, Zhang agreed. Some are just bigger and scarier than others, but at the end of the day, they all follow patterns, they all have weaknesses, and they all make the mistake of underestimating humanity's capacity for turning the extraordinary into the mundane. He pulled up the latest advertisement for human extermination services. From quantum parasites to cosmic horrors, No job too big or too small. Family-owned and operated since Earth's first contact. Now serving all major galactic sectors. Ask about our senior citizen and multi-system discounts. You've turned the extinction of species into a business model, another council member observed, somehow managing to sound both horrified and impressed. Nah, Zhang corrected, we've turned problem-solving into a business model. The extinction part is just a sometimes necessary side effect. Besides, our new slogan is, solving cosmic problems with down-to-earth solutions. He paused. Marketing spent 3 weeks on that one. The final irony wasn't lost on anyone. The species that had terrified the galaxy with its capacity for extermination had become its greatest protector. Every threat, every horror, every cosmic terror that emerged found itself categorized, analyzed, and dealt with like just another pest problem. You know what the funniest part is? Zhang asked, closing his tablet. We're probably the only species in the galaxy that could have handled the Void Swarm, not because we're stronger or smarter, but because we're the only ones who looked at a reality-destroying cosmic horror and thought, yeah, we can pest control that. He stood, straightening his now official Human Extermination Services uniform. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have 7 emergency calls pending, 3 training sessions to oversee, and apparently something's trying to eat the fabric of reality in Sector 7G. Tuesdays are always busy. As he turned to leave, High Councillor Vexithor called out, Lieutenant Commander Zhang, one last question. Does it ever bother your species being known throughout the galaxy as the Exterminators? Zhang paused at the door, that familiar predatory smile crossing his face. Your Excellence, humans have been protecting their homes from unwanted guests since we first crawled out of the primordial ooze. We've just expanded our definition of home to include the entire galaxy. And hey, he added with a wink, at least we offer a satisfaction guarantee. The council chambers filled with nervous laughter, because really what else could you do when the species you once feared as harbingers of death had become the galaxy's most reliable customer service providers? Sometimes the most terrifying thing about humanity wasn't our capacity for destruction, but our ability to make that destruction so thoroughly professional and mundane. Don't forget, Zhang called over his shoulder as he left, we're running a special this month on quantum phase treatments. And remember, we don't just control pests, we protect homes, even if those homes are now entire solar systems.